Now, through the walks of life, we might experience loss. We might go through pain in some specific time period, and we might ask ourselves if we'll ever get out of this pain, if we'll ever regain what we've lost, if we'll ever feel all right again. Now, in my own life, of course, I've asked myself this many a time. I've experienced a few minor losses, a few minor setbacks. I've gone through periods of extended melancholy, sorrow, whatever you want to call it. But one time I realized something, and I created a sort of mantra, a sort of quote for myself to aid me whenever I feel such a way. Now, the quote set of phrases, and it goes, "What exists now will never exist in the same way, because nothing ever stays the same. And what has happened," and the second part, "what has happened once will happen again, for nothing ever changes." And the third part, the last two parts don't contradict each other. Now, maybe this might sound a bit strange to some people at first, but when you think about it, or at least when I think about it, it makes total sense. Nothing ever stays the same. Of course, everything is in a constant state of change. You can't even call it a state. It's just always changing, even though the walls of this house, they might seem sturdy in a few decades, they might start crumbling apart. Even though you might seem young, energetic, or whatever. I don't know how old you are. In a few decades, you'll age. You might be weaker, yes, you might have less energy, yes, but then you'll also be more experienced. You'll also have more wisdom. Everything changes constantly. The weather, your perception, your thoughts. Now, how does that relate to pain or loss? Well, even your emotions, they change indefinitely, and always they change. Now you feel something different than you felt 5 minutes ago, and in 5 minutes you'll feel something different than you're feeling now. Maybe you might describe it in a similar way, but of course it's not by far the same feelings. Now, when we go through loss, when we go through pain, we might ask ourselves, will I always feel like this? Will this pain ever go away? And of course it will. You just have to wait. I know it's a cliche, but time heals all wounds. Maybe it's a little bit exaggerated, no. Time changes the emotions you feel about those wounds. Of course, the wounds will never go away. Whatever you feel lost will remain lost. But the emotions you feel, they will always be changing, maybe for the better. most of the time for the better. Do not worry. Now the second part. The second part. What once was shall be again. Or what once existed shall exist again. However you want to phrase it. 4. Everything always stays the same. Or in other words, what goes around comes around, of course, as they say. What existed once shall exist again. Nothing in the universe only happens one time. Of course, maybe there's a longer interval. I don't know, maybe there's been another Big Bang before ours, maybe there'll come another again. But more in terms of if you've lost a love interest, if you've lost a spouse, a loved one, of course, do not expect this one particular person to come back. But the concept, the idea of them, they remain in the world. What this person meant to you might be in a different person. Of course, I don't want to say there's lots of fish in the sea, that's a little bit overdone. But more like, if you have the circumstances to experience something like this love that you might have lost, you will always be in the circumstances. You will always have opportunity. Of course, fate is something that you must trust, but time, you don't even have to trust it. You know time. Time and fate will work together to bring back something that you've lost. Maybe it won't be in the form of another loved one. Maybe you've lost a sibling or a child, family member, a friend. Of course, you might feel that whatever that person meant to you will never come back. You might find that meaning in a completely other person. You might find that meaning maybe not in a person, maybe in a hobby, in a project, in an action, in a pet. But that feeling will come back, for whatever goes around comes back around. Whatever leaves you, everything is a cycle, must come back around to you sooner or later. For nothing ever changes. For everything always stays the same. The laws of the universe, they haven't changed ever. The human psyche, for as much time as we're interested in the human animal, our psychology, it's never changed, or it hasn't had the time to. Definitely not in our lifetimes. We won't see a change. This ties too into the, as people say, history repeats itself, of course. And the third part, The last two parts do not contradict each other. Of course, now you see that yes, everything changes constantly and will always be changing, as well as everything always stays the same. It's all a cycle. Yes, you're always moving on the cycle around a clock. Maybe imagine a clock. Of course, every second, the hand of the clock is in a different position. Every second it changes, every second moves another step. As in life, we always do move another step. Every day, every moment, everything moves another step to another circumstance, another situation, another state. But as on the clock, it still always measures one day, as long as you calibrate it correctly, of course. But it's always measuring a day. It always comes back to that 12. Every day, 12. It comes back to every position eventually. Once every 12 hours. For us, once every few years, once every few millennia, eons, seconds. But again, if you've lost something, someone, meaning, purpose, if you've had it before, you'll have it again. If you're experiencing pain, any bad emotions, they won't last. They'll leave. As everything does eventually. Ashalamam, my friends.